Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Mystic Games. Today we're going to be talking Against the Storm. I play this a lot off recording, obviously, because you guys haven't seen videos for this probably in almost a year now. But the DLC dropped like a month ago at this point, so I want to do a video on pretty much everything, kind of where I did already, but a new tier list, adding things. They've changed food supply. They've added species, and they've kind of moved things around. So it has changed the game slightly. So I think doing some new tier lists on this game is actually a cool and interesting idea. That being said, we're going to jump into it. So today we're going to be doing biomes. I'm going to go through each one. I'm going to put like how cool I think they look, the kind of resources you can get there, how good I think the biome is to beat, like how... I don't want to say easy, but I guess if it's easier than the others in ways, or harder, and just talk about the biomes in general. So we're going to talk about the Royal Woodlands. These lovely pictures came right from the Against the Storm wiki, from themselves. So the Royal Woodlands is like rich in roots, moss, mushrooms, flax, and a decent amount of dewberries and clay. The ground is fertile and soft, which means it has average fertile soil, so it's pretty good for farming, and the woodlands give you a lot of wood. So, yeah, so it's a fertile soil is about average, which is the highest right now. There is no like high unless you get a modifier. The trees come with additional wood, so every time you knock down a tree, or I shouldn't say, every time you chop a tree, because it actually takes 2 chops to cut down a tree. But every time you chop a tree, you get 2 wood automatically. You also have a chance at resin, plant fiber, and eggs. So very low chance of getting some food, a little bit higher chance of getting some special resources, kind of, and then resources to make cloth. But you get a lot of wood here. Beavers can go crazy, and you can like gather 4 wood a chop, which is just insane. Natural resources that naturally spawn here are roots, veggies, plant fiber, berries, mushrooms, clay, sea marrow, meat, and eggs. So pretty much the big issue is, or the big bonus of coming to the Royal Woodlands is you have infinite wood. Not that there's not other ways to fuel your hearth, but having extra wood is just very nice. There's also a lot of traders that will buy wood, which makes that useful as well, just because you have an abundance. You can essentially ignore a lot of other, fuel sources, and focus on things that use wood, like lumber mills or something like that. So it's very good, especially with beavers, I would say. I think beavers just make this crazy, especially if you get the lumber mill. Pretty much, clay is okay. I prefer stone over clay, and you have clay here, so that's a downside, I would say. But there's ways to make up for some of the other missing resources. I'm going to put the Queen's Forest in... I think it's an A-tier biome to play in. It's hard to do tier list on this too, because every time I think about this game, there's so many variants on like species that you can get to have to be your villagers. There's a lot of RNG in this game, so you have to take what I say with a grain of salt, because I would say this is generally an A tier. If you have beavers, a super solid place to go. I do want to mention what they look like, because each zone, like every time you go into a map and you actually go on there, you see like different. This is like evergreen pine trees and big, lush trees, and it has like a nice... I like the ambience to this zone. I think it's very simple. I would say like the ambience and what it is B, because it's just a very normal place that you would see. But I think as a playable zone, I think A. I think this is always a solid choice if you have the option and you're going on a difficulty higher. It has a lot of good resources, but again, RNG dependent on what you have for species as well. I think most biomes, you should kind of look at what you're working with for your caravan and then pick. But I would argue that I tend to like to go to that biome in particular. So I'm going to put it in A. Next, we're going to talk about the coral forest. The coral forest looks super cool. And the thing that's cool about the coral forest is that the trees can offer different resources based on what the tree is. They all have different looks. They all look very unique. And you actually can hover over the trees and see what each of them offers. So that's really cool. Your villagers also have a plus 3% double yield chance per hostility. So producing more in this map per hostility is an additional bonus that you get. It has an average amount of fertile soil, which means humans are okay here. Pretty much if you have average fertile soil, humans are always a decent choice because you're probably going to be able to get some farmlands going. All trees can be harvested here, and they give wood, but they also give an additional resource. So let's talk about the different trees. You have the Crimson Reach tree, which gives you 40% chance to get stone and 20% chance to get incense, which is fantastic because stone and incense are both decent resources. You have the Muscle Sprout tree, which is pretty much wood, meat at 40%, and then 20% crystallized dew, which is super solid. Crystallized dew is a great resource to be able to get. If you have foxes, this makes having foxes a lot easier because you have a way to obtain crystallized dew. And you have a way to get meat, which is just nice to have. Meat is a relatively good food resource because it's used it can't be farmed, right? You can't use fertile soil to just keep farming it, so you need a way to collect meat. I value insects, meat, and eggs higher, like food-wise, because they can be harder to obtain or less consistently obtainable. And then we have the Plate Lift tree, which has plant fiber on it, which is alright. Not the best. Natural resources here are vegetables, reeds, herbs, stone, meat, insects, and coal. The issue for this zone or biome is that you don't have any good place to get flower production. So you really do need to kind of use farms for that. It does have coal access, which is an interesting thing because I think this is the only map that has coal. And then you have that unique hostility buff that as you get more hostility, you actually get double production, which can be very nice. I think this map's very interesting. I think you have a lot to work with here. The fact that you have access to a lot of stone and crystallized dew and meat, it's a different play style in a sense. You can do a lot more like pipe and tool production, which means you can pop open more glades. It actually, kind of inspires you to pop open more glades by increasing your hostility to get that plus 3% double production, because it's like, hey, you're going to be punished, but you're not going to be as punished as bad as any other map because of that little 3% we're going to give you. Let's see. What else can I say about this? I think this is very, very pretty because it has all the different trees. So for looks, I would actually probably say, trying to think of all the different maps and what they look like. But I almost want to say this one's S tier for the look of it. I think the Coral Forest looks really cool. Like, if I was to do it by looks, I'd probably say this one's S tier. This is probably one of my favorite looking maps, just due to the difference in trees. For a biome, I'm going to put it in B tier. I think it offers a lot of different play styles, in a sense, comparatively to the Royal Woodlands, but I think you have so many different focuses and directions you can go into. I think that can be bad, in a sense, because you it tends to, once you kind of get your RNG down and you get your species, you get your buildings that you get in the beginning, you can start kind of cracking things down and getting your orders in place and stuff like that to progress. and you tend to try to focus as much as you can on certain different things. You know, you're going to pick like a primary focus that you're going to do for your economy generally, and then you probably have a secondary, or you know, even maybe a third in this game. So I think it's a very good map, and I think there's a lot of use for a lot of the different species here. You're pretty much, it's very positive for almost every species. I might actually, should I put this in S tier? As a biome? I think this biome, it's hard to say. I think I might actually put this, I feel like even with the weaknesses this has, I think the strengths make up for it because it has so many different playstyles. I'm actually going to put this in S tier. Now that I think about it more, I think I have to. I think it just opens up so many things. I actually don't think the forest adding the plus 3% to hostilities great, but I think it's better than getting nothing. So I think we're going to put it in S, guys. I think that's an S tier biome. Let's move on to the marshlands. Now, I'm going to give you guys my favorite strategy for the farmlands, or for the marshlands, the marshlands in a second. But what it is essentially you have giant mushroom trees. Fungi is growing everywhere. It's very blue. This is a very blue map. What we're going to talk about first, now that I'm going through this tier list, I'm talking about looks. For looks, I think it looks cool, but I think it's very simple. I would say probably B for like design. I do think it looks awesome, but I think it's, you know, it's probably B tier. I think it looks cool, but it is very basic. It's just a bunch of mushrooms going on. Anyways, let's talk about the actual map and gameplay-wise where I'm going to put it. So the effects you get on the marshlands are your gathering speeds increase for every 2 that is assigned to a camp. So if your camp is full, they get a plus 10% bonus in production speed or gathering speed. The marshlands have giant resource nodes in Forbidden Glades. In every glade is different for the giant resource node. But that's Forbidden Glades. Forbidden Glades, not dangerous glades. There's a small amount of fertile soil, so you cannot use, well, I shouldn't say you cannot, but you have to be very lucky to be able to use farming here. You tend to not find fertile soil unless you luck out. There has been a time where I played on this map and I literally had 2 glades that I opened up right next to my base had fertile soil, and it was absolutely insane because I didn't bring anything, and I was like, this is ridiculous, because that would have been super nice start. But yeah, so very low fertile soil here. You normally can't rely on that for your food sources, so most of your camps are what you're going to be using, and that's why the effect for the 10% boost is there for them. All trees provide wood, and then they also have a small amount of mushrooms and leather as a possibility. They're called mushwood trees. The percentage on mushrooms is 15%, which is actually pretty decent. You're talking like every 1 and, 9 trees you're probably getting a mushroom, which gives you some sort of food source that you can, that's better than getting nothing from the lack of fertile soil. At least you have some access to mushrooms from the trees themselves. You also have grain, mushrooms, stone, meat, eggs that can spawn in resource nodes, along with copper and coal. So you pretty much are going to be wanting to hopefully get meat, eggs, and mushrooms a lot, because grain is very good, but it cannot be eaten raw, so you don't really want to get it until you have another sort of food source that is coming in at a good rate. It has 3 forbidden glades, and each one has a unique giant resource. You need to have the advanced blueprints to harvest them. So you have the ancient proto-wheat, which is a pretty much, I shouldn't say infinite, but pretty infinite amount of grain. It also has a high chance of getting reed, herbs, and oil, and then a smaller chance at amber, which is essentially money. You then have the dead Leviathan, which is probably would be my favorite, which is a lot of meat. And then you have access to leather, bone marrow, or sorry, I don't think it's bone marrow. Sea marrow, and then jerky and crystallized dew, which are all solid resources. And then you have the giant protofungus, which is a ton of mushrooms, a decent amount of dye, a good chance of leather skins, insects, and pickled goods. So very good for food source, the giant protofungus. But I like the dead leviathan the most because crystallized dew is a good resource. It opens up a lot of different... pretty much the dead leviathan's resources open a lot of different play and capabilities for you. They don't have any... So let's talk about this map. You don't get... There's not a good chance of getting wood in the sense of you're going to get 1 wood per tree. So fuel is going to be a little bit harder. You do have access to coal here, so you can kind of use that to help supplement. You don't really have good options for making fabric because you pretty much only have leather. That's going to be capable, so fabric here isn't great. This is a very good, what was I going to say, lizard map generally because there's a lot of meat and eggs on this map. And they tend to do good with those food sources. I would say harpies are kind of weak here. And not that harpies are weak here, it's just the stuff that they want, like fabric, is going to be lower. Although they do like meat, so kind of evens out, I suppose. You need to get probably you want an alternate fuel source here. I'm trying to think of what else is important. You do have stone here over clay, which I do benefit stone higher. So what do I think about this? What do I think about this? So what I will say about this is one of my favorite cornerstones for this map, and obviously you're not guaranteed the cornerstone for this map, but if you get the mushroom guide, that's 1 in every 25 times you harvest a mushroom, you get additional mushrooms. This greatly helps on this map because not only is mushrooms a basic resource here, but you get it from trees, and you get it at trees at a pretty high rate. Especially if you have beavers here for whatever reason. You're going to have a really good chance of getting double yield, which means they're going to just pull 2 mushrooms anyways. And then if you get... that, eventually you'll be getting like a ton of food. You'll essentially be getting a lot of mushrooms out of your woodcutter's lodge. So I do usually recommend the fungal guide, I want to say it is, for this map if you have the opportunity to get it. Especially early on, it's extremely helpful for food. And it, you can use mushrooms for flour, which is very helpful as well. So where would I put this map gameplay-wise? I think on average, this is probably a B tier map. I think this is one of the harder ones to beat. As I said, if you get Fungal Guide, like first perk, you're probably going to have not a hard time here. But overall, I think the resources that you have, you're very limited on what you can do. It's a lot lower when I think about it, it's a lot lower opportunity, I think, compared to some of the other maps that I have above. You're really trying to get to the Forbidden Glades to get one of the 3 resources. As I said, I would prefer Dead Leviathan, probably Giant Protofungus next, and then the Ancient Proto-Wheat. But none of them are really bad. And then you're probably trying to get a fire source other than wood, just because wood's probably going to be low for you. But yeah, I think this, and because of the small amount of fertile soil, I actually think this is just very hard. I'm a big fertile soil fan, so I think that's my bias here. I found ways to beat it, like talking about the fungal guide and stuff. I found other ways to essentially supplement for not having it, but it is a very different play style, and I really like to use fertile soil as much as I possibly can. And it isn't a relatively hard resource to find. Next, let's talk about the Scarlet Orchard. I'm already almost 20 minutes. We still have 4 more to go. This shouldn't be a long tier list. This, for like looks-wise, you have a lot of red and gray. I think the map actually meshes really well. I would actually probably put this as A tier in looks. I think it looks very pretty. So moving on to what we actually do here in this map. So you have archaeology going on where you can build like an archaeologist hut, and it will essentially, it helps you when you collect ruined tablets. I'm probably butchering that, but it has a lot of ancient tablets, not ruined tablets, ancient tablets. If you have ancient tablets, and you can upgrade your archaeologist building to give you a ton of benefits. I normally try to focus on just gathering the tablets up and then buffing up myself based on tablets. There's excavation sites around the map that you can go through and do, and they give you a lot of tablets and other resources, which is really cool. It does have an average amount of fertile soil, so I'm biased, so I like this more already. And all trees provide a good amount of wood. So this is like you always get one wood, and then you have pretty much a 60% chance to get another piece of wood, and then you have copper, dye, and plant fibers with a low percentage. So it's a relatively good wood map because you're generally going to get a good amount of wood. So fuel sources aren't as in dire need. Although the other resources you get with the trees are a little bit lower, but you do have access to copper on a pretty solid amount. So you can use that to do some, pipe forging, weapons training forging, bar forging, all that kind of stuff. You have grain, roots, reeds, herbs, berries, sea marrow, stone, eggs, and copper. The archaeological hut is available. The office is available. I'll just call it the office. So you can use it to reveal discoveries. You can use it to increase glade events, and you can also do increase scouts carrying weight and movement speed. You just have a lot of different choices in what you can do to upgrade. You can upgrade the building and then get more. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with this. The issue with the scanner upgrades is that I normally don't need them, because normally I can find one or two on my own. So I just feel like it's kind of unnecessary. I feel like the other buffs that give you a permanent buff to like your villagers or to yield production are a lot stronger than the other ones. Anyways, that's kind of off topic. But you have the excavation sites. You have 3 of them. They're very useful to get. So what do I think about this? I think the excavation is a unique mechanic. I like that you can kind of farm them as well. Like you break them down, you break them down again, and you break them down again, and they become like a harmony decoration for you as well, which is nice. They also give you some reputation bonus and usually a perk. You have good access to copper here, which means you can use that to do metal type things. You also have access to stone, which is generally better than clay in my opinion. And it has a good access to ancient tablets as well, which is good for amber. So I would actually probably put this in A tier as well. Just having a steady source of wood immediately is good. You have the access to infinite food with fertile soil. You get easy access to copper, which is good for making things that tend to be a little bit harder to obtain in some other maps. And overall, you just have a good selection of like food and stuff to use, I would say, in the start. I mean, the weakest thing here is probably access to like meat, eggs, and oh my god, what's the other one I'm missing? I can't think what it is right now. But that's pretty much all you're missing is the like lizards would probably not be the best in this map, is what I'm going to say. Simply because you don't have a lot of access to meat type food resources. But yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that. It has like I wouldn't probably use a species that requires a lot of jerky or skewers here. That's probably like the biggest weakness of this map. So that's something to consider before you select the Scarlet Orchard, depending on your caravan. Alright, next let's talk about the Coastal Grove. Unfortunately, I had to use the effect picture because they have not updated their wiki yet to give us a cool little icon. But this is the new one. This is the DLC one we're going to be talking about here. So you have a big, like, water area and like a lake that's right off the beginning of your base where you can send out expeditions, and those expeditions will yield blueprints. And resources, I should say. So that's really cool. I think that's a really cool idea for a like a unique mechanic. Also, once you use bait, because you have ponds everywhere here, so like every time you open a glade, I'm pretty sure it's like 100% that you get a fishing pond resource. So having the fishing hut upgraded is really strong here as well. That's something to mention about a strategy for the Coastal Grove. Embark with the fishing hut, because pretty much every glade has fish in it. It also has average fertile soil as well, which means you have a backup source of food, but it's almost probably more consistent to just get the fishing hut and rely on that. And then trying to get packed, oh my god, I'm going to call it packed goods, but it's cropped, like crop goods. That's pretty much what you're going to probably want to use your fertile soil for, is to make a pack of cropped goods. I'm not saying that right because I can't think of what the proper name is for what it is off the top of my head at the moment, but you would use that to make the bait to then, fish. So that's kind of the strategy there. Because when you fish, you get the ability to sacrifice algae in the ancient hearth to reduce hostility, which is pretty solid. Anyways, so it has some cool, unique mechanics. You have a lot of access to food here because of all the ponds. So the trees here are called kelpwood trees. They provide 1 wood, 30% chance at algae, and a 10% at veggies. So they are actually a pretty decent way of getting a secondary food source, or I should say, just getting a little bit of extra food. Veggies are not actually found on the map as a primary resource, so it's a good way to get vegetables. They have berries, insects, roots, clay, reed, fish, scales, and algae found on the map, and then you have coal. As I said, getting a fishing hut with the embarkation bonus to upgrade it is really good, or just upgrading your fishing hut when you find it in blueprints is a good way of doing it. You have to remember that you have limited access to blueprints on this map because you're going to be using the Strider more than orders and resolve to find blueprints. But yeah, using packed crops is probably the best way to go about this, is finding the granary. I think is the best way to make packed crops. It's the cheapest. Probably doing that and then getting a fishing hut's probably your best bet in this map. The Strider port's really cool. You give it some resources, it goes out for a certain amount of time, and it finds blueprints up to 8 times. You find a blueprint, then you get resources, or a chest, I should say, and then you find blueprints and resources, and then you find a chest and resources. That's kind of how it works. It jumps back and forth between that. Most chests have a cornerstone, or a perk bonus, I should say, that you get along with it, so that's really nice. It gets essentially easier to find better chests and stuff as you keep going out on expeditions as well. So, yeah. What do I think about this map? Get fishing hut, that's what you want to do. Make sure you have a fishing hut here. Upgrade your fishing hut as soon as you possibly can. And then set up food sources to the best of your ability to make sure that you can send the Strider out to get more bonuses and goods. And then probably try to make sure you have a way to make packed crops to increase your fishing yield. Look of this map, I think this map looks awesome just due to the fact that you have this giant water area that's like a little lake, and it has all the old buildings from before the storm hit. So for looks, we're going to put probably A or S. I'd probably say A or S. That doesn't really matter because, this is mostly gameplay. For gameplay, I actually think this map's probably A tier. I think it's unique. I think you really just need it's almost S tier in the easy, like, pretty much you just need to get the fishing hut here, and you're going to be doing pretty well. Because you're pretty much guaranteed to have some source of fishing area, which is going to probably provide you with some level of food. But I'm going to put it in A, even just because I don't think it's an S tier. I don't think it's as overly valuable as our other biome there. I will say overall, Coastal Grove, super fun. It's new. It's the DLC. I do like it. I do like that every biome kind of has this really unique feel to it when you're playing. And I do appreciate the new, like the new ways of playing and making you kind of change your playstyle per map. Next, we're going to talk about the Cursed Royal Woodlands, which is technically both the sealed forest is part of this, but it has a seal in it, and then this is one without a seal. Pretty much it has the ability to have ghosts on the map, and the glades, you can generally not tell what kind of glade is what kind of glade, which can be very deceiving, which makes it a little bit harder. It does have an average amount of fertile soil, which I do like. I'm a fertile soil fan. The trees are decent. They give normal food, but they give one wood with a 60% chance of wood, not 100%, but a 60%. So you're always getting at least one. Normally, you're probably going to pull two, and it has a really high chance. I shouldn't say high chance, but it has a low chance, but a higher than it's a 10% chance, which is pretty decent, of insects, plant fiber, and roots. So you have a little bit of food source too coming off the dying trees. Grain, vegetables, plant fiber, herbs, mushrooms, clay, sea marrow, insects, and copper are found here. I'm going to put this in C tier. I think it looks awesome with all the dying trees and being the corresponding of the Royal Woodlands. The issue is the ghosts are very random, and you can get really, really in trouble if you get a bad ghost. Because it can kill you if you're not prepared for them. It's like essentially getting a glade event that you may not want to get. It is rewarding if you're able to do it, but because of the randomness of this game, if you get a bad ghost that you cannot handle its request, you can just die. So that being said, I'm going to put it down in C. I wouldn't pick this if you have other options, just because generally it's going to be harder. Again, caravan and all that kind of does play a point, but I don't like the RNG of the ghost. I've had issues where I've pulled really, really bad ghosts, and I've been like, I don't think I can fulfill that. Sometimes I've been able to, sometimes I haven't. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the sealed forest. So pretty much the sealed forest is this map, but you have the sealed, the hidden seal there, and you got to do that. So every time you try to do a hidden seal, this is the map. When you're here, every time you chop down a tree, your hostility increases. There are trees that take more than 2 hits to chop down here. I believe it is 10 chops to cut a tree down. Is it 10 or is it 20? I'll have to look at the wiki here in a second. There's trees that you kind of want to focus on for harvesting lumber, and then trees that you're going to cut down just to make a path to get to the seal. Because your goal is generally to get the seal as fast as you possibly can, while being able to manage getting to the seal, because you don't want to cut through a glade that you can't manage, because then you're just giving yourself an additional problem. You get a negative effect every storm, on top of the negative effects that you're already getting from the seal that you have to worry about. This is obviously meant to be the most challenging. I'm putting it for, we're talking about how easy things are here and difficulty. This would be a D tier. Simply because it's probably the hardest you're going to get. It has just extra negatives upon negatives for the map. That being said, the map itself and the idea of it's just the mechanics are better than any other map. I'd probably put it, I actually really enjoy doing the seals. I would put it probably in B tier. Because I get frustrated with the RNG in this game. Obviously, there's a ton of it, as we all know, everyone that plays this game. And you can just get really bad RNG and just die. But if we look at overall difficulty, this is obviously probably the most difficult of the maps. which is kind of what we're doing here, is kind of difficulty. So we're going to put it in D because it just is. That being said, you have the hostility for the trees getting shut down. You have the ancient seal that's going to give you a negative. You have a beacon tower, which is cool. It's like this unique building that gives you buffs that are useful to have. And then you have, you know, interesting trees here. Beating the seal gives you more time every cycle. So it's nice to actually beat this because then you can, you know, get your additional time just playing through the map without it resetting on you, which is fun. Let's talk about the trees here. So you have abyssal trees here, and then overgrown abyssal trees. That's what it is. So it's 20 charges for those. Anyways, they provide 1 wood. You get meat, sea marrow, and leather. You're not going to be relying on wood in this map. If you're relying on wood as your fuel source, you're probably going to lose because you need wood to do other things like make planks, and you do not want to be cutting trees due to the negative hostility modifier. And you already have enough negativity just from the seal trying to kill you along with every other debuff. You get access to roots, reeds, berries, mushrooms, clay, sea marrow, meat, insect scales, algae, and copper ore. The fact that you have sea marrow here is something I want to mention because sea marrow can be used as a fuel source and therefore it's very nice to have a stonecutter's camp because you may need it to get the sea marrow. Just bringing that up now. There's a bunch of different negatives you can get. They're all not great. The tower can essentially give you free resources or give you more fertile soil. It can increase your global production. Villagers with resolve being low will leave slower. All trade routes are faster. Hostilities decrease for the current season. Corruption is increased, so you don't get, or corruption resistance is increased, so you're not as easily negatively impacted by that. Unless you're a really good player, and if you're, I shouldn't say if you're watching this, you might not be, because there's probably people that are really invested in the game that just like to see other people's opinions, but you don't want to use water on this map unless you have to, unless you're very, very knowledgeable at controlling corruption, because you're just making an unnecessary issue for yourself, in my opinion. Water is a very nice resource to have and to be able to use in engines for buildings, but I would argue that it can be very detrimental at certain times, and you want to know what you're doing. So my recommendation is do not use it in your buildings if you do not feel comfortable on this map in particular, because it's just going to make problems. And unless you're playing on Settler or what's the other one? There's the 2 lowest levels, because you won't be negatively impacted by water usage. That being said, I'm putting it in D for difficulty because it is obviously probably the hardest map at most of the time. And then I would say for actual fun and design, I think it's like, it's probably up in B, but it's D. I think the seal looks awesome too. The art for the seal. I think the completion of the seal looks super cool. For those who have beat it, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, we're gonna put it in D for difficulty. It's obviously meant to be a challenge. That's the whole point. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. Sorry that took me a lot longer than I was hoping to do for these 7 zones. I'm hoping you're enjoying the DLC as well. I'll catch you in the next one. Later, guys.